here. The light of the whole world was here. Jesus, the Son of God, had come to earth to teach us how to live. And if you were here last week, you saw that Jesus came into Jerusalem on a donkey. During a parade, they threw the palm branches. Maybe you even made a palm branch. If you weren't here, my name's Miss Corey. Hello. And we'll catch you up to speed.
This is Jesus.
Heyo!
Who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. While Jesus was on earth, he taught everyone about God's love and healed people from their sickness. He did many miracles like calming storms and even raised people from the dead.
Wahoo!
The Jewish leaders and teachers did not like what Jesus was doing or how he claimed to be the Son of God. And so they made a plan to arrest him to get rid of him once and for all. Judas, one of Jesus' disciples, agreed to betray Jesus.
Come in.
And give him over to the religious leaders for some money. Jesus was in a garden praying, and Judas showed the man who Jesus was. Jesus was arrested and taken to the rulers of the land so that they could decide what to do with him. Jesus was presented before the high council, and they asked him if he was the Messiah, the Savior of the Jews. They asked him if he was claiming to be the Son of God. You say that I am. And the council was furious, and they shouted that Jesus was guilty and he deserves to die. So they took Jesus before the Roman ruler Pilate, and he heard the case against Jesus. Pilate didn't think that Jesus had done anything wrong.
Seems okay to me.
They found him to be innocent, so Pilate said that he would punish Jesus and then release him.
What?
But the crowd kept screaming louder and louder, "Crucify him! We want him dead!" And because of the pressure of the crowd, Pilate turned Jesus over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified.
This is from the Jesus Storybook Bible. So you're a king, are you? The Roman soldiers jeered. Then you'll need a crown and a robe. They gave Jesus a crown made out of thorns and put a purple robe on him and pretended to bow down to him. "Your Majesty," they said. Then they whipped him and spat on him. They didn't understand that this was the Prince of Life, the King of heaven and earth who had come to rescue them. The soldiers made him a sign, "Our King," and nailed it to a wooden cross. They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they were going to kill him the way that criminals were killed. They nailed Jesus to the cross. "Father, forgive them," Jesus gasped. "They don't understand what they're doing." "You say you've come to rescue us?" people shouted. "But you can't even rescue yourself." But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A legion of angels would have flown to his side if he'd called. "If you were really the Son of God, you could just climb down off that cross," they said. And of course they were right. Jesus could have climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop. Like when he healed that little girl and stilled the storm and fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. "Papa?" Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. "Papa, where are you? Don't leave me." And for the first time, and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just a horrible, endless silence. God didn't answer. He turned away from his boy. Tears rolled down Jesus' face, the face of the one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun could not shine. The earth trembled and quaked. The great mountains shook. Rocks split in two, until it seemed that the whole world would break. that creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own son. Instead of his people, it was the only way that God could destroy sin and not destroy his children whose hearts were filled with sin. Then Jesus shouted in a loud voice, "It is finished!" And it was. He had done it. Jesus had rescued the whole world. "Father," Jesus cried, "I give you my life." And with a great sigh, he let himself die. Strange clouds and shadows filled the sky, purple, orange, and black like a bruise. Jesus' friends gently carried Jesus. They laid Jesus in a new tomb carved out of rock. How could Jesus die? What had gone wrong? What did it mean? They didn't know anything anymore, except they did know that their hearts were breaking. "That's the end of Jesus," the leader said. But just to be sure, they sent strong soldiers to guard the tomb. They hauled a huge stone in front of the door of the tomb so that no one could get in or out. So Jesus, God as a human, came to earth. He came to earth to teach us how to live and to teach us that life works best when we live with him, that we're happiest when we're serving him and serving other people. There was one problem with that. One big problem. Because as you guys know, you and I are sinful. And we always have this natural tendency where we want to do what we know isn't right or isn't good, and we want to run away from God. And Jesus knew that when he came to earth. He knew that that was the plan from the very beginning, that he would have to die in our place so that we could have a way to God. And so, like we know what happened in the story, like we saw and read, the Roman soldiers took a purple cloth, and it was like when they took the purple cloth, they were making fun of God because purple was the sign of royalty. And so they took a purple cloth and they put it on him, and they wrote on a sign, "Jesus of Nazareth," that's where he was from, "King of the Jews." That also, they were making fun of him, just like the purple robe. And they hung it above his head. And they took all these thorns, prickly thorns, and they made a crown and put it on his head. And the people yelled, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And they tied up his feet with rope. And they took nails and they nailed his hands to the cross and his feet to the cross. And they hung him on the wood, and the soldiers took a sword and stabbed his side, and they mocked him and they made fun of him. And for hours, he just hung there, breathing his last breath. Finally, when his body couldn't fight any longer, he breathed his last breath and said, "Father, forgive them. They don't even have any idea what they're doing." And then the whole world went dark. The Son of Light had died.